All right, let's start backwards. Let's start with the angry child instead of the parental ego state. So, angry child, pros and cons. Start with the pros. High energy, yeah. Intense energy, maybe. Sort of a competitive energy, right? So we could say competitive. They are passionate. Angry childs are very passionate. Not impulsive. Reactive, which could go positive and negative, right? But on the con side, they're reactive too quickly. Here's what's interesting about us as human beings. We will always fall back to the level of training that we've had. So a good example of that is driving. So if you've ever had to jam your brakes on, brake and avoid, you've ever had to slide, there's this instinctiveness, this sort of unconsciousness, this reactive, let me just fall back to what I've been trained to do, right? Brake and avoid, all right? Anything else? They blame a lot. But they're a different type of blamer. They're the emotional blamer versus the critical parent is the blamer finding fault. Like, you didn't do this well enough, you didn't do this fast enough, this is your fault. This one blames from more of a reactive side. They're very disruptive. And we might sort of, look at it as like they're almost like attention seekers. They need their emotions acknowledged. They need their position acknowledged. In fact, if you notice where we said the nurturing parent to the angry child is the stopover in order to help deflate that child, is back to significance and attention and seeing them. Teamwork? Yeah. This is a saying is you want to be on their side of the table, not across from them. So, these are the ones that we tend to maybe sometimes tolerate because they do get certain things done. Could be destructive to other people, but they are fire in getting things done. Withdrawn child, let's talk a little bit about that. What do we got for the withdrawn child? They're observant. They could appear to be, right? We were talking a little bit about that, which is there's a tipping point where they go from being quiet in a positive way, which is they're receiving. It's like a blend of the adults where they're listening, they're taking it in, they're creating space. They're not so quick to launch into, I'm avoiding and I'm backing off and stuff like that. But technically, yes, they can be observant. Introverts, is that good or bad? The definition of introvert is what we're talking about here. So they are introverted, but introversion is not a negative thing. Introversion talks about the frequency we tend to operate best at. So in order for me to focus on something, I need a quiet room, I need to sit with it for a little bit, I need to sort of process, I need to let it sort of simmer, versus extroverts get their energy from being more outward. More pros to the withdrawn child?
Reflective?
Yep. Yeah, considering yesterday and sort of what happened and how did it go. Interesting collaborative. They can, but they're quiet in their collaboration. So the challenge with that is they, unless invited in to share their idea or specifically asked to participate more, they might wait. And at that point, the perception is they're not collaborative or they're just very quiet during collaboration. We might argue the nurturing parent is very collaborative. Because they're others-oriented, and they're giving, and they're contributing, and they're supporting, and they're adding. Anything else positive? We wouldn't know they were sweating the small stuff because it's all internalized, right? So even if they were. But technically, yeah, they could create space between sort of what is something to worry about and not. We might argue that's the adult in its pure essence, which is the ability to process what's important, what's a priority, what's worth feeling, what's worth getting hooked by. Disengaged. And what happens with that is if we don't engage with them, they don't step up. So they get further and further and further back. One of the biggest positives about the withdrawn child is they give space. So we're not so quick to launch in and jump in. We're not so quick to answer. They could appear indecisive. And again, indecisiveness can come from the absence of assertiveness, so lower critical parents, so I'm not making those decisions, right? And then the withdrawn child kicks in, which is I'm worried about what's going to happen if I make those decisions. And then absence of the adult, so there's not enough sort of qualification and thinking through that. So as we progress with this stuff, we're going to recognize that all of these ego states are like a plate of spaghetti. There's never really just one pure ego state operating. There's usually a child ego state blended with that parent, so you got that emotion fueling the behavior. We got the parents blending with the adults. We got a couple child ego states blending. All right, let's jump over to the spontaneous child. So extroverted. Pros. What does the spontaneous child do? Passionate. Yes, they are passionate. So is the angry child, but different type of passionate. They're an excited passionate. These are amazing people to work with because you go and you give them ideas and they get so excited. They're like, this is awesome. They bring this sort of energy. They're optimistic. What else? They are very collaborative, sometimes in a bad way, because they're overpowering in the room, they don't give space, they're not listening to other people, they're barraging their ideas, it's idea after idea. But technically, if it's managed properly, it's collaborative, because it's fun to work with. Anything else? Flexible. Right? Critical parents are not flexible. Like once we lock in, we lock in. Right? Spontaneous childs are flexible, and the key word there is adaptable. They'll be able to switch in the moment. Not good at multitasking, none of us are, but the myth or the perception is they're good multitaskers. They're not. They're very good at jumping from one thing to the next. It's the follow-through and the execution and the completion. Right? Which brings us to the cons. What are some of the cons? Impulsive, unstructured, all over the map, bouncy balls. Sometimes a nightmare to manage. A little bit of what you were talking about. Like if I don't give them that list and if it's not sort of controlled, right, they're bing, 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 squirrel, and they're off. All right, let's talk about the critical parent, pros and cons. Let's start about the cons. Where critical parents, where do they mess up? They could be mood killers. Right? So they bring down that positivity because they immediately come in and say this isn't good enough, or you didn't move fast enough, or you didn't do exactly what I expected you to do, or you only got 95% and I'm disappointed you didn't get 100. They shit on the accomplishments because they see what's not there. Paint this beautiful wall. I go, what the problem is here? There's this thing right here. You see this? I didn't patch this right here. Right? They ignore the effort of what's been put in order to find the problem with that patch. My way or the highway. I know what's right. Right? You'll listen to me. Kind of feels like, wow, this person's got like this. They're inflexible and there is an ego and they're unwilling to acknowledge other ideas. Right? That's the collaboration thing. So technically, they're a parental ego state. Empathy comes from the nurturing parent, but it's all hosted within that parental. So they could recognize the importance of being empathetic, but they just don't care, right? Like that's not important, right? The goal, the accomplishment, the target, the objective at all costs are important. Well, they're disciplinarian, right? Like they discipline a lot, but they're very disciplined in their own expectations. That's the joke about the critical parent, which is they usually are and can be very high performing because they've got very high expectations on themselves, and they're unforgiving, and we are very focused on the objective and the goal and the achievement and the pushing and the taking responsibility and being accountable and doing it yourself. However, that can be really overbearing for other people if we don't turn it down. Always right, exactly. They're argumentative. There's not space to hear, right? And that's where we battle. That's where we end up in that child ego state because we're like, oh God, this person's not listening, and I don't think they will. They're not adaptive at all, right? They're fixed. They're firm. Time and a place for all of this stuff. That's why we're looking at the pros and the cons. Right? What we want to be able to identify moving forward is what is the volume of this stuff I need to operate with. Like, oh shit, I got to turn this down a little bit. This is actually going to go against what I'm trying to achieve with this person. Here's the ultimate con with the critical parents. When you are away, they don't follow the same process, lists, work. They work when you're there because we're always checking up on them. Did you do it? Is it done yet? Why is it not done? And what we want to get into is not the checking up. We want to get into what is called the checking in. Hey, how's the list going? Have you made a dent in that list? Instead of, is the list completed and why are you only at this stage of the list? Right? Lists aren't bad. It's the communication that comes afterwards. Any other positives to the critical parent? I know exactly what you want and what the need is and what the expectation is. Thank you very much. The danger sometimes in leadership is we're not enough of the critical parent, so we don't create the clarity of what the ask is, and therefore we're leaving it for people to decode. See, the danger, and that's what we spoke about with the ulterior transaction, the danger with the ulterior transaction is that the other person is forced to decode or to mind read or to guess or to sort of figure out what exactly is your objective, what exactly are you saying, what exactly do you need? And most of us don't decode well. And again, all of these things, they can tip over. We could be too focused on the results. You know what the critical parents do is critical parents are really hard on the process. Well, they're hard on the people and hard on the process. And what we should do is be really hard on the process and a little more interpersonal or softer on the people. All right, that's why we have both ego states, critical parent and nurturing parent. We just don't use both of them effectively. We use one more than the other, and sometimes the other pops in when the other one should. Nurturing parents, cons, let's start with that. Time management becomes an issue for the nurturing parents because we take it all on. We're too supportive sometimes, too forgiving. They tolerate bad performance. They allow for bad performance. This is the whole concept of helicopter parenting. So what happened between the generations? Why are the generations so different? It has far less to do with when they were born. It has more to do with the parental environment that they grew up with. So all the research around generational differences point to two things. One, it is not the year you were born, it's the parental environment or how you were parented. And two, the stage of life. So we moved from the Gen X's, which we were latchkey kids, which is the parents were away and we raised ourselves, to the next parenting style, which some of you have done, right, where you are hovering over your children. You're just at the park and at the stuff and you're just hovering over it. And then we moved from helicopter parenting to snowplow parenting. And snowplow parenting means we moved obstacles out the way so the kids didn't have to feel resistance. This all started back in the day in California with the university, where the parents were like paying for their kids to be accepted or pass or whatnot as a big sort of thing. Anyway, so this is what snowplow parenting is. And it's not because you wake up and you intentionally do this, but you want to make your kids' life easier and you want to, make it, you don't want them to feel the burn and the pain. But in the exercise of doing that, we've done that too far. Which in turn, back to the over-nurturing parent, doesn't allow the kid to grow up. They become what is known as dependent personalities. The nurturing parent will make the decision. The nurturing parent will look after it. The nurturing parent will tell me what to do. The nurturing parent will swoop in and rescue when I didn't perform. And in all of my effort to help them, I end up hurting them more because they never grow or develop the ability to be independent and to feel the pinch. And that's for team members as well. We are living in a leadership world right now where we have sort of really swung a lot to this excessive coaching model. Everyone needs to be coached and supported and helped and progressed. And yes, I think that's great. But we also need to hold people accountable. They need to perform. They need to deliver. They need to, right? We need these results as well. The positives? It's usually the easier one to do with nurturing parents. Good listeners, yeah. Collaborative, empathetic, supportive, kind, helpful. As they say, many hands make light work. The nurturing parent says, come on, let me help you lift that box there. That's a good nurturing parent. Let me carry the box for you. Maybe that's why your back hurts. Finally, the adult. Let's talk about the negative of the adult. You know what the positives are. Where does the adult go wrong? Think about it when it's too high. So they miss the emotion and they miss sort of the personalities in front of them because everyone's just robotic. Analysis paralysis, yeah. So we become indecisive because we are spinning in regard to should I? Right? It's the artist that never finishes the art piece because it's always, there's another thing to do with it. Time management can also be an issue for the super adult because they get really caught up in the granular. Really, the adult can be too robotic, right? So they miss their opportunity to connect with people. Impersonal, yeah. Surgical. When the finance person comes in and says, all right, HR, here's what we got to do. We got to lay off 13% of the staff, and we got to reduce headcounts, and here's who's going. The adult does that perfectly. And then they say, could you please go have those conversations? So that's the calculating sort of super adult, which I got to tell you, look, making those types of decisions, there's an apathy to it.